Okay, it is 10:35 and I'm Jessie Stratton, Secretary of the Task Force, and in Zell's absence, I am convening this meeting. So the first order of business, I believe, is to actually, if I can do this without crying, express our incredible appreciation to Zell Stever for his phenomenal leadership over the last years of this task force. And there is absolutely no way to enunciate what his loss means to us personally and to the town of Groton and to the wider state of Connecticut and obviously his family. So while I keep my composure, I think we will move on to the agenda. But first item is those present. We have Paul Fox, Nikki Weiss, Frank Bolin, me, and I believe that Maggie Jones will be joining us later. Are there any members of the public present? Okay, if not, we will move on to the business at hand. I just want to state that I submitted the minutes from our last meeting in March. Zell and I write them up and he usually reviews those, and he was out of town, so that did not happen. So given the timetable of needing to get minutes in, I sent them in. You have a copy of them. So I think if there are any additions or things that need to be changed in those, that would be in order at this point.
I noticed one additional S on the end of Stratton.
I will correct that. Are there any others? Thank you very much.
Do we have to accept the minutes?
I think it would be good.
I move to accept the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We will make that more official at this point. So if there is no public present, I assume that there are no announcements, any comments from the public, but a couple of announcements. We've just received a message from the town, and I'm going to recommend that we proceed with at least the first part of our agenda and then add that on as new business. So, and in our new business agenda, the first item on it is really just a rehash or whatever, a summary of our presence, the booth we had at the Earth Day Expo at the library. And since all of us were there, but maybe since Frank was primarily responsible for the information that was displayed on sea level rise, would you like to begin?
Sure. I thought the day went very well. And I think it was my first time at the Earth Day Fair. We certainly had Earth Day exercises in past years, cleanup areas and hikes and the rest, but the first time at the library, and was impressed with the range of displays and the level of visitorship participation, the number of folks that came in over the course of the day. I thought that the Q&A sessions, all of the interactions that I had were very good. We learned a few things because there were a few people there that knew an awful lot about the subject, from electricity, I think at Coons, to sea level concerns. Some of the latest work on in the Antarctic. There's a fellow there that had all the most recent, as in the last month's papers on his fingertips when we go through it. I thought that the our interest in education over the years as a task force was certainly increased after Earth Day. That it really had ideas.
Yeah.
I think you got to spots that we could do more, and whether we choose to do that is another matter of how best to do that, who else to involve, from the schools to some of the local groups, SCOSA and the rest, League of Women Voters or whatever it is, is really, I think, the question before the House. But I think overall it went very, very well.
Would either of you like to add anything to that?
Well, I would support that statement, as I was also very impressed with
Right.
with the number of booths that were there, the diversity of subjects that were being presented, and the attendance. I mean, that was
Yeah,
really fabulous for a
Yeah.
town to be able to put that sort of thing on. And I was proud of our town for doing that.
yeah.
Really Jason Hines, but
Yeah.
so I would just add that we also had available for visitors to the booth to pick up a sheet on energy efficiency opportunities on the sustainability side of our task for both Groton Utilities and Eversource. And we continue to have some of those if anybody has a use for them. So with that, I think we move on to the other item of business, which is really talking about how this group should or should not go forward or evolve. And since I was driving down from Massachusetts this morning, I haven't had a chance to really absorb the notice that came into the task force this morning. And I'm wondering, Frank, if you just might read it. So I mean, I
Sure.
have a sense of what it was, but
Well, John Burt wrote an email to us. I'll try to get back to it in a second here. Where he said he wanted to touch base with us prior to this morning's meeting. And per the town's adopted guidebook to its ABCs, task forces created by the council, by its ABCs, agencies, authorities, boards, commissions, committees, and council. Task forces created by the council are temporarily established to review a particular concern and then create a report to the council. That's the guideline that he is operating with, that he appears to be operating with when it comes to this task force. He then says, I'm not clear whether the task force earlier report was considered, or I suppose should be considered, the report. If not, please let me know. If there's still work to be done to wrap up the final report, Mayor Franco will need to appoint a new chair.
okay, thank you very much, Frank. Maybe as a prelude to that discussion, I should update the other members of this task force on meetings that we have had since Zell and I met with the mayor and the town manager on January 18th to discuss the proposal that at our previous meeting we had put together and presented to the town as to how this body might evolve into an advisory board to the town council rather than a task force, which would then fit some of those other criteria in there. To date, we have heard nothing in response to that except perhaps this email from the town manager this morning, which doesn't really answer that question. I sent out that memo again to all of you. You all had it, but you requested that we have it in front of us as we consider the question of going forward. The task force made a formal report to the town council a few years ago. I would have to go back and dig up the date of that, but it had recommendations in 4 different categories of things. And I don't believe that would be our final report. I think, I'm not sure that it makes sense to rehash all of that, but one could embrace that with other comments pending our discussion today. So how we could proceed with this 2 different ways. We can discuss a report, or we can decide to discuss what we think should happen with this body, what we would like to request the town council does with this body going forward. And I guess that is where I would suggest we start, unless any of you have different thoughts on that.
Yeah,
I wasn't a member of the task force when it was initially established. And so maybe you could tell us, those who were here, what we were told the task force life cycle was going to be. What, you know, was in fact understood that this was a temporary task force that was going to issue a report and be dissolved. And also maybe you could tell us what you think when there was when the next council was elected, it seems to me that we were renewed, so to speak, or we were.
Actually, that was a formal process.
Yeah.
We were initially created by the town council with the charge that, as far as I can understand how things work, is still our charge, which includes a wide variety of subject matter on both parts of resiliency and sustainability. When the new town council was elected, well, I should back up. We made that initial report to the town council that created us. Then there were, and I would have to go back again, but there was a formal reappointment of the members of the council that was open-ended. So I do not know that we have a term that our membership expires upon. We certainly serve at the pleasure of the town council, and they could change that at any point they so considered. Is that helpful?
Right, so it would seem like that if we were to be reaching the end of our life cycle, by the definition that this memo seems to imply, that we need to be dissolved by the town council, because we were established by the town council. Is that what you would think?
Well, I don't think we have a life term that has expired at this point. The town council could certainly set one, but I am not aware of a time that our appointment ends. And that was part of the reason that we put together that memo at our prior meeting from that one to present to the town council as a thought about how we should proceed. And we have gotten no feedback from them to that proposal. So I feel a little bit in limbo.
I think John Burke's memo says that the council hasn't even considered those
Right.
requests.
Right.
So
you're reading between the lines, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I am. That's what it sounded.
Well, they certainly haven't told us
Yeah,
if they have.
right.
Let's put it that way.
Well, to some extent, the way I read the memo is that is not necessary. And you were given a charge, you satisfied the charge, and you can go home. Exaggerate only slightly. But I can tell you that the charge that was presented to us when we were set up in 2019,
Mhm.
something like that.
Yeah.
Was sort of to address the climate issues affecting the town of Groton. Again,
And
simplify.
sustainability.
We heard nothing about. You write the report on the shoreline resilience, and that's you're dealing with shoreline resilience. You're dealing with energy. You're dealing with the whole issue. And when we looked at it, recall what we did. We the first thing we did was sort of try to put some boundary around the subject. And we went back and looked at the past 10 to 20 years of climate actions in the town of Groton. Back in particular to the report that was issued by Zell's group in 2010 or 11 or 12, somewhere in there. And then the steps that followed after that. And we drew some conclusions and we looked at some pieces. And of course, one of the conclusions out of all that is you really need some coordination in all of this. The fellow that was doing it was sort of pick up from Department of Public Works, and he moved over here and he moved over there. And so out of that came the recommendation to hire Megan. And then that was,
And just Frank, can I introduce for a second?
Sure.
In addition to the recommendation that they hire Megan was a resolution that we wrote.
yes,
That in fact suggested that issues related to climate change, not just sea level rise, but climate change in total, was to be looked at town-wide, so that it was,
all the time. That was another piece of it at the same time. Out of it came that resolution.
right. So
Which the
those
town
those
adopted.
kind of went together, yeah, and they were, that resolution was adopted.
Right.
And just a question from my edification, is it a resolution that was adopted by that council carry through to
Yes,
the current
it does.
council?
Absolutely.
It does, but I'm not sure that there are many, many resolutions on the books. And I think it is clear that a current town council is not necessarily aware of all of those. But I do think this one has been raised by members of this current town council. So it has been raised to the town council that it exists.
So
I'm
just
sorry to interrupt.
so to finish that, the resolution was another piece I would have come to. And we also then submitted a report on dealing with this number of subjects.
I'm going to interrupt again,
Go.
just for my memory bank. Was that report, I know we presented it orally, I was there for that.
Right.
Was there also a written report that went along with that?
I don't
There,
think so.
well, there are the individual pieces that each of the 5 areas that we worked in, those are buried in Zell's files, if not in mine.
Right.
But were they given in writing to the town council?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. They
I don't-
certainly could be. They're voluminous.
But the long and short of it, of those activity brings us to a few days ago. Where you look at it and you say, well, we've got this, and we talked about education, and we talked about energy, and we talked about resilience and dot. And we then look at the council and what's going on with a number of things like the data center and others that we addressed. This is a subject of continuing concern, multifaceted, multidisciplinary. We thought, as a group, and that's what Zell's memo is saying, that it would benefit the town by having a group, call it a task force or a strategic committee, or make it a committee or council, committee for the council or advisory group dealing with this subject for a long time, continually, and basically made that proposal to the town in the person of John Burt and the mayor, Rachel Franco. I believe that's what the letter was saying.
Yeah. Yes,
And what the memo was saying, sorry, Nick.
So this was what was actually given, was a resolution that Zell wrote that called it a
yeah, no, that's what we discussed.
Climate
We wrote that
change
at our last,
advisory
Adopted it.
board
right,
with the idea that.
Right.
and that was what.
So that
the
brings us to
discussion
where we
was.
are today.
Yeah.
Okay, and through all of this, we never heard that we were charged to write a specific report on a specific topic, other than
Was to
the
report.
breadth
to-
of the topic.
So I think the issue there may be, as the town manager just indicated, that task force in general have been created for a limited period of time, make a report. And that was certainly true of the ones Zell chaired back in 2010. That's what happened. And so I think part of the discussion among us this morning is we could do that. We could create a final report. We could say, we think this is something, as we did in that memo, that continues to need attention, but probably not in the form of a task force. And, I think there are so many components to this subject matter. And I think the resilience component and the very successful job that Megan Granano has done in getting grants to pursue different sections of that are things that will proceed under the planning department and her work with other departments in the town. That certainly does not cover the gamut of issues that were embraced in our initial creation or in the reports that we presented. And, you know, there haven't, other than those two specific things we've referred to, Megan's hiring and the incorporation of climate considerations in all town actions, none of those other specific components have been enacted upon. So I should at least acknowledge that Frank served with the group on the downtown Mystic flood study. So that was sort of a task force input into that. And prior to that on the Groton Long Point Bridge, but not to get backtracked. I think what we
Right.
really want to talk about now is I guess there is an understanding on the town manager's part anyway, that we have a finite life when our task is completed. I certainly don't think our task is completed, but I think it could go forward under different auspices. Love comments from others.
Well, it's, you know, if you look at what we've been involved in here and what the town is involved in, certainly Megan is a real significant add to the town to get the funding to do the kinds of things that we might be thinking needs to be done for the town. But as I look at the town, there's no function in the town that does what we do. It will get distributed. It'll be small jobs here, small jobs there. Public Works will do something, planning department will do something, but it isn't a coordinated effort. The coordination of this effort is through us, as I see it. And I'd continue to be willing to make that effort to help the town coordinate the kinds of things that need to be done to have resilience and sustainability in town. And you know, as we've talked about this in the past, we too recognize that we had accomplished certain things and that we were looking for what we were going to do in the future.
How best to
best do what we were going to do in the future. Before I saw the memo this morning, I was prepared to come here and I thought we were going to be looking at where we move from where we've been to where we're going to go in the future. But if the town is in the town council chooses not to have us contribute to the town, that's their choice. But I would suggest that if we're going to sit here, we should set our own goals, go forward, and suggest that that's what we will do for the town. And it's up to them to determine whether they want that done or not, or would choose to try to bring that in-house. We are the most cost-effective way to do what needs to be done in this
You can
town.
get all those paychecks.
So it's I would suggest that we continue on the path that we started. Try to determine what our future is, because the town isn't working with what we think we should be doing until we tell them what it is, and then present that and have them make their decision on what they would like from this task force.
I like the coordination emphasis.
Mhm.
And I like, because I think that what we've seen is that coordination, collaboration between the departments and the various elements of the town is key to success in any of these projects. And that's one of the reasons why we recommended that the manager's position be in the town manager's office, as opposed to planning or public works or one of the other departments. That you see, the way I see some of the work that's being done, there are a number of issues that are outstanding right now in the area of climate change in this town. There is the comprehensive climate study
Action plan.
that's supposed to be climate action plan that was supposed to be proceeding. I don't have any idea where that's going. If we had some better liaison here, we might hear this morning about that. I think all too often what happens is the Long Island Sound study, pick a name, happens to come up with a few bucks for drains. And they put out a competition for those bucks, for those dollars. And the towns, our town and others, are involved in drainage studies. Whether or not that fits into the priorities is often overlooked, because the priority is we've got some more dollars to provide some staff support to do this, that, or the other thing. It's very easy to get the efforts diffused, diluted by the attraction of a dollar. It may be counterintuitive, but that's a fact.
Well,
So I like that we would be offering, that we would be offering to provide an element of coordination and all of this, and an idea of priority establishment on projects. Feeding that to the council, we have strictly, as far as I know, in conversation, been speaking to the council to serve as consultants to the council.
Yeah.
That is our.
And not in competition with the different departments, Megan or John or any of those.
Yeah.
But rather as help for the council.
Right. Well, if this group is dissolved, the way I see that, it's going to get spread out throughout the town. We have a town planner who would probably take the lead on this, and then Megan would also be very much involved, but she works in that department. But that department is trying to do overall planning for the town. The sustainability piece of that would be a very small element and would not receive a great deal of attention, in my opinion. That this group continues to emphasize the sustainability piece and provide some of the driving force to make some of those kinds of things be considered at higher levels in the town.
I've given this a lot of thought over the last month in particular. And I think I guess my feeling may be slightly different than those that you have expressed. And so I would like to at least share that. I think having had no response whatsoever from the town council after Zell and I met with them in January, I question what the value of the advice of this task force is perceived to be to them. And hence, I think my inclination is to write a report, which I would like to address a little bit also to them. And in light of the town manager's memo this morning, say, the ball is in your court, and whether that involves formally resigning, I am certainly ready to do that. But I think the town council needs to decide what it wants to do with regard to trying to ensure that the town as a whole addresses both resiliency and sustainability to the extent that it can. I would like to add to that, because if that report is something that we want to do, I have spent much of the last month following legislation at the Capitol on these issues. And I want to report a positive note on that too, but a bill that was actually the governor's bill, Senate Bill 11, was not enacted, but one part of that bill, which this task force testified in favor of, added very, very important components to what should be included in a town's plan of conservation and development. And when the town planner met with us in March, I believe, he indicated that that process is just underway with an adoption date of target 2026. This is a plan that needs to be done every 10 years. So in the amendments to the Plan of Conservation and Development statutes for the state, which has long included components that haven't necessarily been specifically required of the towns, but since our plan has to be consistent with the state, it is implicit in that. But Senate Bill 11 really spelled out that new plans of conservation and development, and had this been enacted, would have been required by 2026. But I guess my recommendation would be that at least if this task force ends, we recommend to the town and to the town planner that as they initiate the revision of the town's plan of conservation and development, that they incorporate the requirements that would have been enacted in this, which include sort of assessing vulnerability, assessing resilience to different things, with planning for what are you going to do to address this and that, and including more, I don't want to say, specific information about drainage systems in the town and all of that kind of thing. I don't need to go into the detail because we can just take Senate Bill 11 and make that a part of our report.
So it's clear to me that the tasks that our task force were tasked with are not complete, in the sense that there are many things going on in town that need to be addressed to really make the town resilient and sustainable in terms of dealing with climate change. So as far as the idea that the tasks that we were tasked with are complete, which was what I think was being said in this memo, is incorrect. So that leaves us with what our role is, and clearly no one's paying attention to us. I mean, even the people that you and Jill met with didn't have the courtesy to respond until for months. And now this is the response that doesn't even address what was put forward, which was the idea of this board. So I think we are pissing in the wind. And so what are the ways to stop that from happening? One is, I think, like what you're suggesting, which is that we just basically say, look, no one seems to want to listen to us. And for that matter, I would say a lot of people don't even know we exist. You know, let us know if you want us to continue what we've been doing or not. And if not, okay. The other way of doing it would be to be a little bit more proactive and gadflyish ourselves, which I think would get us away from this business that we really have been, in my opinion, spending an awful lot of time on worrying about our mission and our role vis-a-vis the town council, instead of worrying what I thought I was joining the task force to do, was to worry about what we do about climate change.
Right.
And so I think that one way of our getting some attention would be to take some climate change issue at each of our meetings, and maybe we could divide it up a little bit like we have, you know. I feel like I've been working on this composting and solid waste management issue, and Frank on the sea level, and you on energy and so on. I think we've each taken a little piece of this and we could then put out some ideas that we could disseminate both to the town council and to the agencies that in the town that should be, we think, paying attention to this stuff. And that could get people's attention. It might even piss them off a little bit.
Well, I think you missed the
and-
newspaper.
Huh?
You missed the newspaper.
And we could be public about it. So I think that's two approaches. One is we could kind of just roll over, play dead, and let the town council let us know if they want to resuscitate us or not. Or we could become a active task force that was dealing with the issues and not necessarily with the town politics of all this. Frankly, I could go either way on this myself, because if we're not going to be dealing with the issues, if we're going to continue to be dealing primarily with worrying about our role and relationship to the town council and to the town manager and even to Megan these days, then I'm saying that's not something I'm really that interested in. But I am very interested in the issues of flooding and solid waste expenses going up and lowering our carbon footprint, all those things that I think are each individually and as a group passionate about.
I don't know whether it's appropriate. It's a long time since I've chaired committees. I did a lot of it for a while, but for the acting chair at this point, or to make a proposal. But I think there are two different avenues that are going here. So let me just try to make a motion for the one that, would you like to comment first, Paul? Sorry.
Yeah, and before we kind of cement
Yep.
in what we're going to do, one of the things we talked about last time was to go home, come back and figure out
Right.
what we
yes.
wanted to do. And I'll just throw this out as a thing to consider, is that I'm looking for a place for
Yep.
where I sit on this committee. Everybody is doing something. And it seems to me that in the town, there is no direct contact between this town and the state and federal agencies that control a lot of this stuff. And it may be, that might be a function that we could serve as, be a point of contact for FEMA, for the Corps of Engineers, for the EPA, and there may be other agencies. That there's a lot of work done in those agencies that are directly related to our interests. And yet we and the town, we go to these agencies when we get in trouble, but we don't have this coordination with these agencies on an ongoing basis. To that end, I have contacted FEMA and the Corps of Engineers, and trying to set up meetings to see what sort of resources and advice we may be able to receive from the outside agencies. And as I was putting this together, I didn't even touch EPA because I know that's going to be you, Jesse. But that was kind of my thinking on some of the things that we could do. We are, as individuals, we are tied into a lot of these groups, more so than some of the town employees. And we could certainly, I think, contribute to the town's effort and by coordinating some of these other things. Let's see, what else did I think about here? The other thing is we seem to have a high focus on education, and we can there is a lot to be done in the school systems. Young people in high school are very energetic in scientific areas. And it's very beneficial to them if for a whole lot of reasons to get outside of the box of the normal curriculum and to take on projects. We can identify lots of projects that can be done by students and be presented and have that be in their sort of in their basket as they're either applying for college or just doing AP work in school. The there's a lot of those things.
Yep.
I have a grandson who is built a drone and is surveying the wetlands over the seasonal changes of the wetlands up in
That's cool.
Massachusetts.
Good.
And he's got that as a senior project. But I don't see those sorts of things happening here. We can,
Oh, they are.
yeah, but it's,
You don't hear about them.
yeah, I know, but we can be a resource for these kids and for the education department here to help that or promote that within our system. Let's see.
One group you didn't mention was Circa.
Yeah, yeah,
Circa can short circuit a lot, no pun intended,
yeah,
of what you're saying there,
Hmm.
because they have contacts with all of the above, number
Yes.
one.
yeah,
And number two, how those agencies, which are global,
hmm
might be involved with issues that are local.
yes, yeah. No, that's what I'm trying to get
And they
to, is that,
spend a lot of time doing that sort of. I'm sorry, you missed Circa, and the Circa group.
Yeah.
Has a lot of people working on just that sort of liaison that
Yeah.
we're talking about.
So I'm wondering whether there's sort of a way to marry what I was going to propose with what you have just said, Paul. So let me give it a try, not in formal language at this point, but that in light of the town manager's memo this morning, and lack of response to our proposal from January, that we say that it would appear that the town perceives the task force life as limited to provision of some kind of report on our activities from our initial marching orders, so to speak, and that we make that report, and that report suggests to the town council that functions that we think should continue in some manner include the coordination. And I might start with other agencies that, I empathize, town government has a lot to do. And one of the reasons we never get on the town council agenda is that the agenda is too long already. But that there is a need and a benefit to the town of taking advantage of the work and suggestions that others are doing in these areas. And certainly FEMA and Circa, I would name off the top of the list. Every month they come out with a wonderful report and information about things that would be available, but that the town council consider designating someone. You serve on the RTM, maybe it's you, Paul. Sorry to put, but that there be a recognition of the need for this, that one person in the planning office cannot oversee, and probably the town manager can't oversee either, because I understand they're all swamped, but that function needs to occur. And then that one of the first steps in solidifying the resolution that the town adopted about incorporating these concerns into all its actions and stuff would be embracing that section of Senate Bill 11 that at least establishes that within the plan of conservation and development going forward. And I would say that personally, I would much prefer to take my contacts at this point, given the status of things here, with those other organizations and the work they are doing, and interject into the public comment periods on the POCD, that kind of thing, to take the expertise from Circa, the expertise from the organizations, whether it's SCARA or whether it's the work that Oceanology and other people are doing to do that. So that's not a formal motion, but I could try to tighten it up
Yeah,
as
sure.
to one.
Well, I'm looking at this resolution to establish a Groton Climate Change Resilience and Sustainability Advisory Board that was submitted to at least the town manager and the mayor, that has, I think, excellent language in it. And the part that at least I feel addresses my concern that we be focusing on issues and not, is this might put the whole question to bed of whether or not the town wants to have a group that does the kind of thing that we're doing, but in a maybe more stable manner. So it says, resolved that the advisory board shall recommend policy and best practices for all activities and actions regarding climate change, resiliency and sustainability in Groton to the Groton Town Council, the RTM, and to all boards and commissions, town staff, and other organizations. So that would give that board the right to go to the Board of Education and say, hey, folks, how about putting up solar panels? Or it might go.
I believe that was amended before we actually presented it to the town. We took out and the connection with the other town departments, that our connection was to the town council and the town manager, and that we didn't see it as our role of trying to direct those other departments. But just as you proceed with that, Mickey, that was our proposal to them in January. We have had no response to it.
So in the other, but I would almost say put it back in, because it just says recommend policy and best practices and say you'd have no authority to force them to do it, but here's some good recommendations, you know. And that was an A, by the way, under what the advisory board would do. And B is suggest or conduct educational and informational opportunities to help develop an informed public which uses that knowledge to make and support scientifically informed and environmentally sound decisions that foster resiliency, sustainability, and further. To me, those are what we're talking about here. And then there's a further, the goal of the advisory board's action shall be to further the town's adoption of policies and activities that can reduce loss of life and property, save taxpayers' money, protect natural systems, and reduce social and economic disruption from high impact events and chronic climate conditions. The board may receive and act on other policy referrals from the town council and should provide periodic updates to town council and blah, blah. So that, to me, that's well written. It says
Right,
what
but
I
we
think.
had no response to it.
So
Well,
my question, just
Yeah.
we have not had no response from, frankly, a mayor who doesn't care for us very much, and for a town manager and planners who don't can't. Yeah, I know. The fact, I mean,
Are
let's call it the
overwhelmed
way
at
it
any
is.
rate.
And the fact is I'd like to see this go to the town council, not just to the mayor and the manager planning department, and let the town council say yay or nay. Do they want us or
I should add into that at an initial meeting of this new town council, there had been on the docket of things that had been introduced, a motion to dissolve this, and the town council took that away and affirmed their, I think unanimously, desire to see this body continue. I would have to go back and, I mean, I remember that at the time it happened. Might not have been unanimous, but it was just, no, we think they're valuable.
well, it's interesting. I agree with Mickey that an awful lot what we are thinking about is in that document. That's
Right,
why
that's
it's
what
in
we-
the document. And it may be, I wonder if we should consider a response to the email this morning from Mr. Byrd, to wit, it might, as background, I'm a little bit confused by the email, because I at no point thought of as a single subject beyond the global task force we're dealing with. And just to give you an idea, would you count our recommendations dealing with the manager, Megan Granato's position as the report? Would you count the work that was done on the resolution that was adopted by the town as the report? Or would you consider the number of oral presentations, and can be made written down, presentations dealing with various environmental subjects around town as the report? We could use those examples as really the way we've been proceeding, dealing with the whole of the subject and picking off the priority items.
Mhm.
And we're at a point right now where we have a number of pieces to work on. And in considering how best to proceed, we prepared this document
Right.
for consideration. So that's where we're at,
Though
Mr. Burt.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that those are our accomplishments.
Yeah.
Megan's position and
The
the
resolution.
resolution. Now, perhaps our last hurrah is going to, at least the last hurrah in the current form of a task force, is we say, okay, we really appreciate the fact that you listened to us. With regard to those two things, here's our final recommendation. Set up this board that will continue our work in a more perhaps stable and formal way. And let them decide.
So again, I think there is a way, if it's comfortable to others, to incorporate that in, quote, a report that we seem to be being asked for, and that report recaps the recommendations that we've made in the past, that makes some of the specific recommendations that Paul and I have suggested today, and that we say to the town council, we think you need to decide how you want to proceed to ensure that. And it is those things. I mean, I think education is a huge part of this. Coordination with other agencies, it's a huge part of this. But I don't think that we have been recognized in a position of late anyway, where we are perceived as effectively doing those things in a way that the town council then follows through on, and make that our final report, and sayonara.
Well, is there a motion on the table somewhere?
I could try to put that into one. And I would further say that I would be happy to try to work on a recap of things that the task force has done. We can certainly attach those rather voluminous reports when our first meeting on the 5 different areas, and we haven't touched on public health today, but that was certainly very much a component of that also. And then to make to say, in light of the lack of response to the formal proposal we made in January and the memo we got this morning, we are going to proceed to recap the recommendations as a final report of this existing task force to the town council, and make the following recommendations, which include what Paul was talking about, the need for better coordination, that's, town manager job, et cetera. It isn't ours, but the need for this. And I would say to an initial first step to ensure that as the town goes forward, it is taking proactive action in this plan of conservation and development, which does involve most, if not all, of the town things, and probably to cite education in particular in that, but that sort of comes coordinations with the schools, and we do have some of that going on with the magnet school. But, and I would try to put that into something, and we could adopt the motion by Zoom or something rather than reconvening. I don't think Frank or I have any need to write more minutes.
Yeah,
the
I think
sense
you're, I
of
think
the-
you're right on that, that we should put, certainly we have to put together a letter
Yeah.
and state those sorts of things. We don't need to put the letter together in a formal meeting.
Right.
Individually or as a group, we can meet outside of this.
Putting a
forum.
letter together, sorry, Paul, put a letter together in response to Bert's email.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we should probably just,
And I think we could circulate drafts of that
Right.
among us and then
Sure.
make a formal adoption of that by
Yes.
Zoom. I think
and
that's.
then
And
make
I
that.
would have to check things, and this is one of the things that I'm rusty on. But if that is adopted, it's a part of our draft minutes, and I can deal with Lisa on how we do that in a way that
Right.
conforms to town
Right.
policy.
Well, I think we have a lot to offer. But if if we answer this letter, we present that to the town council and they choose not to have a task force to do this, then that just makes it very clear.
The only thing I would say, I guess, and there may be some DNA involved in all of this, is I don't want to let him off too easily. I want him to say no. Not answering is not acceptable.
Yeah.
I don't find that very professional.
Well,
I want them to be on record
Mhm.
as saying that they don't need this kind of pro bono professional assistance.
Question is, who is they?
The town
Has it-
council.
has it- Yeah, I know, but I don't think the town council probably knows any of this is going on. I imagine the town council doesn't know that we had put forward a resolution because it never got that far.
I think you're absolutely
The
right.
mayor and the manager have been
So
block on this.
there you are.
And so somehow I agree with you.
Should we
If in
present this
fact-
personally to the council?
Getting on the council's agenda has been very difficult. Zell has requested that over and over and over again.
Is that because the mayor has control of that agenda?
Sure.
Mayor and the town council, and in
Mayor,
fairness,
done.
during the spring months,
Done.
they are incredibly busy with budget stuff, as you well know. But
They're
those-
always busy.
Right,
It's always,
those,
it's a
right, those
very-
requests preceded that. As I say, to my knowledge, and I haven't watched all of the town council meetings, but the only specific mention was when that item to dissolve the task force was removed from the agenda, and there was a vote to endorse keeping the task force. But I am willing to take a stab at writing what we've just talked about and circulating it among you for comment and then bringing it before us in a Zoom meeting probably.
Sure.
Is that,
Yes, that would.
You know, Jesse, I appreciate your masochism. To put together the report, but I think it's overkill. I personally think that a letter that basically says
What we've done.
we're proud that and pleased that the manager position,
yeah, no,
Megan's position was approved, that the town council passed that resolution. And we now recommend that this board be established, and here laid right out in legalese is the, because that talks about all the things that really we think should be done either by us or by the board. And to go over, pat ourselves in the back for the smaller things at this point, like, all the meetings we had with town.
no, those are all in that initial report, which would
Yeah,
just
yeah.
be attachments.
So, I just would hate to see you put all that work into something that's not gonna get read. And I think that,
Already done it.
we probably spend most of our lives doing exactly that.
Right.
No, and I think that's been one of the frustrations of everyone on this task force, is that without any direction from the town council, it's always been, okay, what are we supposed to do? And we fall back on that initial resolution, which certainly told us to do certain things, hence we did the booth at the expo, other kinds of things. But it feels very disconnected from our creating body when there is no communication back
Right.
and
Oh,
forth
absolutely.
between them. And I have no interest in continuing to do that. I'll do it through other organizations that
Mhm,
I'm involved
exactly.
in.
Yeah, so I think that's right. If you take a look, you use it as background.
Yeah.
What you have in the file without really
Yeah.
assembling what's in the file. And write that as preface along with the resolution and the position. And then leading into this, all the time addressing this business of a single report on a single subject. As Bert's thing is talking to, we keep it to a one-page statement with attachments and,
Give me two, okay.
well,
No,
good, better you than me,
you're
right?
good at, excellent.
I
Um,
move that Jesse writes this letter.
I will give it a stab, okay?
Okay,
And
okay. Certainly.
no pride of authorship
So I'm gonna
whatsoever.
say here, keep it simple. How about that?
That's good. I like that. Okay, are there announcements, things, activities that people want to bring to folks' attention going
Summer's
forward?
coming.
Summer is coming, and with that, we have actually one thing. So at the beginning of the year, Zell submitted a schedule of regular meetings of the task force. So Lisa very nicely covered my ignorance last week to cancel the regularly scheduled meeting. This is a special meeting of the task force. And I would recommend that at this point, we cancel the remaining scheduled meetings of the task force. And that if we feel the need, we would call a special meeting by Zoom or whatever to deal with our response and what we have talked about this morning at a date after that is put together. Does that sound logical to people?
Just for the summer months? I'm sorry, Paul. So for the summer
I don't
months
care.
or?
Um, I like the idea of having something scheduled, that
Okay.
it kind of forces us to come together. I mean, we have to come together once more anyway at some
Okay,
point.
all right, well, then we
regardless.
can keep the
So
June
we should
meeting.
keep one meeting
We
scheduled.
have a scheduled June meeting,
Yeah,
which I'm
because
not,
when you cancel all the meetings, then it starts
okay.
to be if we can have one, establish one for the future and then decide.
So then
at
we
that
need
point.
to take no action on that because that's already the
Mhm.
schedule and requirement of the
Okay,
task
good.
force. Okay,
Right.
anything else, people?
I've heard from the public on.
Oh, good.
And I got a call on food waste. And I
Oh,
think that
yeah.
falls in your category.
Okay,
And they were very excited about something that Stonington is doing
yeah,
with a quantum quantum recycle. Goes around town in Stonington and collects food waste. And this person wanted to know if we could somehow establish that sort of a program here in Groton. So I'm going to turn that over to you.
well, we are, I've been quite heavily involved with working with SCURA,
Mhm.
Southeast Connecticut Resource Recovery Agency, which has a very, it's moving ahead rapidly
Okay.
on a project that is going to hopefully bring about region-wide composting of food waste. And the status is, and I might just mention that one of the benefits of the Earth Day thing was that I brought Terry Roper, who organizes Peter Roper's TV program, to meet Dave Aldridge, who is the head of the SCURA's head of SCURA. And Dave is going to be on Peter's TV program next week.
Oh, good.
Peter told me
Good.
to talk about the plans to have a composting facility in Preston, And that plan is now um, being permitted. The permitting process, or should I put it, say the DEP is now has the permit under consideration. Dave is optimistic it's going to be permitted. So they have the facility in Preston. They have the Preston planning and zoning folks approval, and they own the location. It's right next to the waste to energy plant up there in
Right,
Preston.
right.
And so the pieces are in place. And I think the biggie is going to be to get people to participate. And so certainly I appreciate your public person having an interest in this, and tell them to hang on, because Dave Aldridge thinks that within the next year and a half, he's going to have this place
Okay,
in place.
good information.
It's really good.
Great. Other announcements? I don't know, I steal your thunder, but Jim O'Donnell, who is director of Circa, is going to be holding a webinar, I believe, next week on sort of updates on resilience measures and things with regard to sea level rise. And I can forward but it's in the Circa monthly thing. But I think all of us would actually find it very interesting, because they've been doing a lot of work that I have not been able to keep up with over the last year or so.
I have also a question that I don't know if we want to, probably not as a group, but individually. Zell had done so much work on this transportation thing.
Oh, that was the positive thing I want to report on.
Yeah. I would worry that some of that stuff is going to be dropped. And just thinking out loud, I don't know if there's anything we can do, or we can do as a group or as individuals to assure that Zell's efforts in that area continue and are supported in some way.
So let me just
There's a nice
update.
piece in the paper
Yeah,
this morning.
wonderful article in the paper this morning. So despite the fact that I don't miss being there until midnight
Yes.
on the last nights of session, I was the last two remotely. And two things occurred that are of importance.
What are you reporting on?
The last 2 days of the legislature. So they did not open the current state budget. So everything that happened in the last 2 days that related to budget was done in the form of a different mechanism. When a budget is adopted, it has implementing bills as a part of it that have all the specific language about what you're supposed to do with regard to this. Instead, because the state stood to lose hundreds of millions of dollars by the end of the year from ARPA funds if they were not expended, they created two different documents that embrace those ARPA funds, basically as implementers, saying we are going to repurpose this money because it was allotted to entities that are not going to be able to expend it by the end of the year. So within the budget, the transportation component of that, which I think we owe great thanks to Senator Austin and to Chris Connolly here in town and to Andre for their efforts to try to support the restoration of funding to Shoreline East as a first step towards creating, as Zell frequently reported to us, extended service. While that was not in that appropriations ARPA bill, it did call upon DOT to report back to the legislature by January of alternatives for how it would ensure a restoration of that funding. So then last night, no, it's the night before last, I actually did get to bed last night. The finance one did a similar thing. And so the transportation fund has significant surplus at this point, which is far cry from when I was there, when it was always running at a deficit. And so within that 350-page bill, which I have not read, there was a specific implementing part of that appropriated, designated since it's not the Appropriations Committee, that $5 million go to help restore service on Shoreline East. That does not negate what was passed in the appropriations bill, but is a start in that direction. And that is what the article in the Day is this morning is about. And its inclusion is that is clearly the hard work of our legislative delegation, including Senator Summers and Andre
Yeah, Andre.
and Chris and Chris Cohen also. And I think we owe a great deal of thanks to them and to Senator Austin. The rest of that is something yet to come, but I think in tribute to Zell, his tenacity over the last years has been phenomenal. And as a result of that, he not only got the $2.5 million to do the initial study for this, he has helped create this down payment on restoring the service of the main track of that Shoreline East. And I'd say, bravo.
Right.
Yeah.
And there is the question of the extension to the
Yes,
Rhode
absolutely.
Island border.
Right.
All of that yet to
And I
come.
think the Commuter Rail Council, I saw their notice after Zell's passing, and I think they're devastated because they know they've lost an enormous champion in that.
Yeah.
So,
Probably to do the legwork.
so anything else
And
that,
Paul just told me that there, because I didn't, something I missed it, or
I'm sorry, what?
there's gonna be a memorial service or
Oh,
a
yeah,
funeral.
it's,
Yeah.
next
16th at
Thursday
1 o'clock.
at 1 o'clock at the Baptist Church.
No, like
and-
Baptist
no,
Church. Yeah. It's not, it's a celebration of life.
right.
It's a gathering of friends. Remember our friend Stever.
And to gather afterwards at Palmer's Provisions, which has now transformed itself. It's really quite gorgeous inside, for ginger ale and cookies.
Okay.
Two of Zell's favorite things.
Right.
So any other business that needs to come before us?
Move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay. Thank you all very, very much. And it's been a pleasure working with you, whatever way we continue to do it.
Thank you. You know how to turn off the machine.
11:47. I can take care of that. Now, as far as I know, all of this was recorded,
Yes.
Still
so,
recording. That's still recording.
well, it's just on. So that means that you ought to be able